I've lost track of how long ago we started this series on being contagious. Last December, I don't know. But what I do know is that we've been learning a lot about what it means to be contagious, and we've learned that everyone is contagious. Thank you from the balcony. Repeat after me. Everyone is contagious. Yeah. All right. So, and it doesn't matter. You might be contagious with good stuff or contagious with bad stuff. So, what does that really mean for us in life as Christians? Well, we've been learning that in being contagious, it's really important for us to know who God is, and it's really important to know who we are, and we shouldn't get those two mixed up. Because it happens. You know, sometimes we get to thinking that, hey, life is going good, I must be doing everything right. And there you are. And as soon as those words come out of your mouth, if you're like me, you go, oh, I should go repent right now because I used that magic word, I did it my way. And you know how that goes. So, we have to know who God is, and God is the one who searches out after us, and He'll go looking for that 100th sheep and leave the 99. And He'll look and he'll be looking out the door waiting for you to come home, and He'll chase after you because He really wants to be with you. And we've learned that who we are is we're salt, and as salt, one of the things that we've learned is that you have to get close enough to other people to flavor them, to sprinkle them with salt. Because salt is no good in the shaker. Have you ever noticed salt's no good in the shaker? Just sits there. Sometimes it's pretty. I like the pink salt. Yeah. It looks nice. You know, tastes better too, I think. But you know, if it doesn't come out of the shaker, it's not worth anything. We also learned that, let's see here. We have to learn to tell our story, and every story has what? A beginning, a middle, and an end. All right, so you guys are back in tune now. That's right, we like that. You know, so and we spent 2 weeks talking about stories and how that's important. And whose story can you best tell? Your own. Your own. You can tell other people's stories, and it can be pretty impressive. But when it's your story, the people you know and you love and who are in your world of influence go, oh, I want to be like this person. I want to have what she has or he has. And then they can talk to you about it. And you can tell your story in such a way that life gets better. So after telling our story, here's what I'm going to tell you. One of the biggest things we can do is be a help instead of a hindrance. Have any of you ever been told by your parent? My father used to say, get out of the way or do something good. Sometimes he would say it the other way. Do something good or get out of the way. You know, we have to do something good. And the Bible is full of the stories. And that's why these two scriptures are on the screen today. Because these two scriptures by themselves really don't help us understand this, but these two scriptures together make it really clear. That first scripture, we've heard that story so many times. Most of you in this room could just tell that story like it was your favorite Bible story. You know, Luke 10, it just says, you know, there was a man going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he got robbed. He got beaten up. He got left. He was half dead. I always wondered why they chose half dead. You know, why not half alive? Well, because half dead is better. It sounds worse. It sounds worse. You know, and it's really important to Jewish law, but that's a whole nother sermon. And somebody needs to remind me that I found in the story in John 20 another sermon. So Crystal, after church, remind me that there's another sermon in John 20. That's all you have to do. I'll remember. So, I have to give people assignments, So when we look at this story, there was the man, he was laying there on the ground. The priest walks by, looks at him, and passes by on the other side. The Levite looks at him and passes by on the other side. And then the dreaded, hated, god-awful Samaritan stops. Not only does he stop, but he cleans him up. And he puts some ointment on his injuries. And he loads him on his donkey. And he takes him to the next inn and says, hey, I found this guy in the middle of the road. I'm bringing you, here's 2 days' wages. See, 2 denarii doesn't sound like very much. Hear that as he gave him 2 days' wages to take care of it. That's a lot. And he says, and if that's not enough, when I come back, I'll make it even. So the first thing we notice is really if we're going to be contagious for the good side, and then Jesus says, well, which of the 3 men were really contagious in a good way? And of course, the man who was compassionate. And see, that's the first thing that we want to know about as we tell our stories and as we want to be helpful, we have to be compassionate. Say compassionate.
Compassionate.
All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, you notice what the guy did as soon as he saw him and his heart was turned and he began to be compassionate. He started cleaning him up. He started putting oil on his wounds and he cared for him and he very gently loaded him on a donkey. I'm still kind of concerned about the ride on the donkey for a man who's going to be just so you know. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, so not only do we have to be compassionate, because we can feel bad about things happening. We can look at the world around us. We can see people who have bad things happen and go, oh, gosh, that just breaks my heart. Put a kid that looks hungry on television screen and ask for money. Our hearts are just rendered by that. But no matter how we feel, if we don't do something about that feeling, it's mute, isn't it? If our compassion doesn't move us to an action, then it's not really compassion. It's just a bad feeling. So we have to be compassionate, and then we have to be caring. We have to be willing to do the hands-on dirty work. We have to be willing to clean up the mess, to touch the hurter, to bring healing to those who are sick, hang out with people that smell bad. So a funny story about that. I happened to be out on Friday night and was listening to some music, and there were a bunch of us there dancing and having a good time, and there was a guy there. His name's, I probably shouldn't tell you his name. No, I'll tell you his name. Nobody will know. His name's John, and he loves to dance. No, I'm not talking about John Nail. He thinks we're talking about him, but he wasn't there. He had had a good time if he had been there. He really would have been. Next time I go, John, I'll let you know so you can come with me. Well, he can bring you too. Gosh, I'm going to be in trouble, aren't I?
Gotta be careful what you say.
John was this free-willing dancer, and his rhythm was sometimes a little lacking, but I'm not one to talk because I don't always get my right foot in the right spot, my left foot in the right spot. And that's why I trip when I'm dancing. Because my right foot and my left foot sometimes try to take the same space. That doesn't work. Not well, anyway. But I happened to be dancing, and John came dancing by. The people I was dancing kind of moved just a little bit. I'm like, where are you going? And then I figured out why. John didn't smell very good. He didn't. He had some body odor. He probably hadn't used deodorant this month. Well, he wasn't pickled, but he was pretty rank. And then I started watching the rest of the room. And my little group was the only group that was having any trouble with John at all. Now, I know that John didn't smell better on the right side of the room than he did on the left. Because I smelled him on both sides of the room. But John was a fixture in this place. He had been dancing there for as long as the bartender could remember. I went and asked. I said, so how long has John been dancing here? She says, longer than I've been here, and I'm old. I didn't have the heart to tell her that made me ancient, but they loved John. They had a good time with John. Some of the locals even did the two-step and held on to John. And I'm thinking, oh my. They were compassionate, but they were also caring. They loved him. Boy, is that a message for the church. The other thing that we find in this story, that guy gave away 2 days' wages to take care of this guy he didn't even know. He was generous. So we have to be compassionate. The first story says we have to be compassionate, we have to be caring, and we have to be generous. And generous is, really important because it's how people see us. But even that story really by itself doesn't help us to be contagious. It sets us up. But in John 20, we meet Thomas. And I've always wondered about this story. Because we know the story about Thomas. He missed the first after resurrection meeting. Where in the heck was he?
Right.
He was grieving, probably. I think that's right. I think he didn't know what to do, and maybe he was taking care of his mother. Maybe he was late. Maybe he didn't know that there was a meeting. They didn't have email back then. Although they'd been told very specifically, go to this place and wait. But he wasn't there. So he goes, you guys are crazy. You're just trying to pull a fast one. Because they were all saying, gosh, you missed Jesus. He's been here. You can imagine them bragging about that. We saw Jesus. He was right where you were standing. And Thomas is going, gosh, quit pulling my leg. You guys are crazy. Dead guys don't show up. You can imagine what the rest of the group was thinking about Thomas. Well, you should have been here. Where were you? And then all of a sudden, Jesus shows up. And just think of all the things that Jesus could have said to Thomas. I want you to know, he did the same thing with Thomas that he did in the first story. He was compassionate. He was caring, and he was generous. He looked at him and said, here I am. He says, put your hand in my wound. Touch me. And then not only was he caring, though, he was then generous because he forgave him. He wasn't like most of us. We'd have said, you missed the meeting? Too bad. None of you would be that mean, though. Because you're more like Jesus. You see, in this story, being contagious about being those three things because we have Jesus within us. And that, I think, is what happens in John 20 when Jesus comes into that room. He brings the Spirit in them again. And this time Thomas receives him. And when we have Jesus inside us, our contagiousness grows. So if we really want to be contagious, we have to be compassionate. We have to be caring. We have to be generous. And we have to do it because we've let Jesus inside us. So that everywhere we go, every hand we touch, every message we deliver, every word of hope that we offer is coming not from our mouths, but from the mouth of God. Amen.
Amen.